Okay. Bom dia a todos. Good morning, everyone. It's obviously a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Claudia, for the presentation, for the welcoming. It's very good to be here again in this university, and particularly within this conference of humanitarian action. I will talk. I don't have a written talk, but I have a PowerPoint, a slideshow, and I will start with that. So I will talk. Conseguem agora ouvir, certo? Right? You are able to listen to us, to me? Okay. So I will talk about transformational communities, a path for a cognitive planet. I will try to follow these contents, a vision, an approach, some methodological itineraries, and the feed forwarding or deactivation. So let's start to talk about transformation or transformational. Transformation and transformational is more and more a trope that is spread. It is all over. We can find it everywhere. If you Google it, you will find information and images about transformational selves, transformational experiences, transformational bodies, transformational homes, transformational leadership, transformational offices, transformational tourism, transformational communities, transformational government. So transformational, it's a kind of a buzzword. It's a buzzword, but we should ask if it is more than a buzzword. Okay, if there is something else there, if presumably it is or not a drive, eventually a wave. Anyway, I think at least we should think about that. We should focus on that. What is transformational? What is transformation and transformational? So also I have this in Portuguese. I think is the only thing that I have in Portuguese. So when we talk about transformation or transformational, we are talking about the future, and we are talking about change. And as we're going to see here, we propose that we are talking about a new kind of science, something that in some cases it's called citizen science, a new kind of creating environments to live in, what sometimes we call collaborative design. And for sure, we are talking about change, and to have a change, we need to have programming for this change, right? So we need to understand what is this programming that we have. And then we will need as well, so we will have dispositives, technological dispositives, in order to activate this change, in order to create a feed-forwarding, in order to open up possibilities of future. And if we understand this, maybe we can understand what is being changing in terms of society. What is exactly the social transformation that in which we are getting in, right? So that's a little bit what I'm trying to talk about in this conference. So we will present some ideas of this vision of transformation and transformational first. So the first 10 slides, and then we will focus on the social transformation in particular, right? So the core, it will be social transformation. But I think in order to understand what is the social transformation in which we are getting in, we have to think about transformation in general terms. So what is transformation? So I propose, and that's exactly that, I'm proposing. So I propose that we can, by now, understand transformation through 5 dimensions. So there is for sure a pulsion, a drive for change. And this is, I think, the DNA of transformation. So we need a drive for change. If we don't have a drive for change, we will not have transformation, right? So we need a trigger, right? So when I say we need, I'm talking about individuals, groups, families, institutions, organizations, nations, eventually superorganisms or global realms, right? So when I'm talking about the pulsion or the drive or the trigger of transformation, it means that we have to go for it. We have to understand, and we have to try to find which is my trigger of transformation. How can I transform my life? So, and how can I transform the life of my family? Eventually, if we are talking about organizations and institutions, if institutions want to survive 21st century, institutions have to understand which are the triggers of transformation. If institutions and organizations, even nations, do not understand that, it will be difficult for sure to survive or to have success in 21st century. And of course, to have a drive or to have a pulsion or to have a trigger for change is not enough for sure. We need a transformational thinking. So, and what is a transformational thinking? Well, again, I'm just proposing it. So, I think what is happening with science is, in a sense, a good way to understand what is transformation. Science is a very conservative framework, right? Everyone knows that. Science is a very conservative framework, and usually it's a framework and a way of thinking regarding addressing the past and eventually the present, but not in many cases the future, right? But science is on the move, in fact. Science is on the move. So there are processes of democratizing science. And there is, of course, critics towards this conservative framework of science. So one of the trends is the citizen science, okay? This idea of the citizen science is a process of democratization of science in which every citizen is a scientist. And science is not anything else than a kind of a set of tools that every citizen can use, okay? And we can do surveys with our mobile phones, with our network, social networks. So citizen science is a way towards a transformational thinking. Another trend is design. We don't think about it, but we live in designed environments. And so design is a very important constraint and opportunity as well in our world, right? And design as well as science is in a process of changing, right? And there is a decolonization of design. There is a democratization of design. And this is the idea of design for all, universal design, collaborative design, participative design. So this, I think, at least these two trends, one in science and one in design, are doors. They are not the only doors, right? Probably we have to think about other trends that open doors towards the transformational thinking. Anyway, I think citizen science and collaborative design are two important doors. The third dimension is feed-forwarding and activation programming. Usually, we have been thinking in terms of feedback. The control of our way of thinking usually addresses the past, so addresses systems of feedback control, okay? But the past is not enough in order to survive and to have success in 21st century. We need to think collectively about the future, and we need to have systems of controlling the future that we are building together by this process of centering the future, right? So, and this controlling of the future in which we are engaged in is feed-forwarding. So we need to center the future, create or build the future, and at the same time controlling it, right? So driving the future, right? And this is feed-forwarding. This is not anymore feedback. Of course, in each process of feed-forwarding, we have feedbacks, right? But they are very quick, okay? Very quick. It's not a long-term feedback. So it's very quick feedback in terms of adjusting our driving system towards the future. So feed-forwarding, it's much more important than feedback. And there is another word that is connected with feed-forwarding. It's activation. So we need to activate ourselves, and we need to activate our future, and that's what we do with brands, for instance, right? We activate brands. In marketing, we activate brands, right? So we need to activate, and this is the process. And which are the techniques? So some of the techniques are already there, right? I'm putting here some of the techniques. So origami, folding, transformers are some of the technical dispositives of organizing our new environments, the environments in which we live in, and also the way we think about it, and also eventually our society. And finally, so which are the social processes that are connected with this transformation? And my proposal is that transformational learning communities of practices are the main social processes. So, just some images. If you Google it, you will see that transformation is everywhere. So, since from transformation dresses, transformational tourism, transforming designers, well, do your own revolution, for instance, transformational presence. So transformation is everywhere. About transformational thinking, two things here. One, it's about citizen science. So every citizen may use the tools of science, and tools of science are more and more friendly used tools in our portable mobiles or personal computers or whatever, or phones. And the other thing, besides science, the other thing is design, right? The idea of decolonizing design, and the idea that besides understanding and observing and to have a point of view, and until this is also about science. This is also about science. But besides that, besides understanding and observing and to have a point of view, everyone needs more and more to have an intervention. And design makes this more clear than science itself. Science is a framework to think about society and to think about life, but it's not a good framework in order to prepare the future and to have an intervention in our environment. So what makes appealing the design to everyone else, to each of us, it's in fact the second part. In design, we may ideate, we may have a prototype, and we may test. And this is important, because if we are going to have an intervention in our future, science is not enough. And even science for all, even science as a set of tools, friendly used set of tools, it's not enough. We need to have a set of tools in order to be able to have an intervention in society. And so that's why I think there is a mix between citizen science, collaborative design, and what we can call planning for all. And of course, the institutions have to change in order to appropriate this transformational thinking. Activation. If you Google it again, you can see there is lots of books and articles and papers and presentations in which the tropes feed-forwarding and activation are there. But we still do not think about this properly, in a deep way. So feed-forwarding is more and more relevant in many fields. even and more in education, because we control the knowledge of our students through a feedback system. But more and more, this is about this book, for instance, the feedback fix. So more and more, we need to fix the feedback. So that's the proposal in education. We need to give our students more and more feed-forwarding clues, hints, and not feedback. Feedback is boring, and it's bad for both parts, in fact, because we give zeros as professors, or less than 10, and this is bad for the professors, and it's bad also for the students. So, and in the feed-forwarding, it's not that the case. So we just say, well, this is not, eventually, this is not a good way to go. Try this or this. And we just are kind of driving guides, right? Try this or try eventually this. And this is the idea of feed-forwarding. Of course, in the feed-forwarding way, we are all lost. We don't know where to go. We have hints, we have clues, but professors and students don't know where we should go. We're trying, right? We're trying. That's what we can do. No more than that. So we need to activate the ways, the paths, and at the same time, to know something about the paths that we are trying to go through. And what about origami and folding and transformers? What is that? Well, basically, they are techno-digital dispositives which are everywhere nowadays, right? So transformers, we can have, okay, I had another slide eventually, but which have more information about transformers, but I don't have it here. Well, what is a transformer? It's easier. And then we can talk about origami and folding. And so this house, for instance, is a folding house, okay? This house is a folding house. This is also a folding lamp, okay? This is a transformer, as you know. So this is a folding bicycle. So everyone nowadays, if you see in your house, you have for sure folding lamps or bicycles, or many of the things that we buy nowadays in IKEA are origami or folding, okay? In some cases, they are also transformers. Probably the best example of a transformer is just our phone, okay? So a transformer is a dispositive that can be used in several states. So usually a table has a state, okay? And a table is used this way. I have to sit here, okay? So, but nowadays, more and more, we deal with transformers, with technical dispositives which have several states, okay? An entertainment state, a working state, a connecting state, so several states, okay? This is obviously probably the most important transformer which we deal with, and in fact, this is the transformer that influence our own self, right? Because this is already part of ourselves, right? We are transformers because, in many cases, because we have a phone, right? A computer phone. But there are other kinds of transformers. If you travel a lot, for instance, you have to have an adapter, right? An adapter is a device which is connectable in UK or in US or in Europe or in Japan. So these adapters that you buy in the airports, right? These are transformers. So transformers are techno-digital dispositives with several states. So 4-in-1, 3-in-1, this is a transformer. And this is important because more and more we are asked to be transformers ourselves, right? As a persons and as well as organizations, as institutions, and as nations. If we are not transformers, we will not eventually survive, or we will not have success in the 21st century. So, and what about societies? And now let's go to the core. So this was the vision. It was just short because we could talk a lot about this idea of transformation and the transformational thinking and the programming of transformation. And so, but well, this is just a short introduction. And our core thing is society and transformational learning communities of practices, okay? And well, in this framework and in this context of humanitarian action, we have to deal and we have to talk about SDGs, right? Sustainable Development Goals. So Sustainable Development Goals are in fact the second global policy, but the second global policy of development. The first was the Millennium Goals, but in fact the first one in the context of the Anthropocene, right? The first one in which we have to have the conscience of the fact that we are driving the planet towards an unknown future, right? So we have to have the awareness of that we are planetarian beings and that our responsibility is to create a livable future for all of us in our planet. This means to create a future. In order to create a future, we have to think about the future, and we have to have transformational thinking, institutions that take care of the future, that are focused on the future. If we don't have that, we will not be able to build a future at all. And that's a huge problem, because our institutions are not focused on the future at all, right? So the title of the declaration of the SDGs is very clear. The title is this: Transforming Our World. The title of the declaration of the United Nations of the SDGs is Transforming Our World. But I still do not see, and this was released in 2015, right? So 2015, September 2015. It's the 2015-2030 agenda, right? But we are in 2019, and I don't see enough changes. I don't see the idea of a transformational thinking. I don't see technical dispositives and people focused on the transformation and on the creation of a new future. So we need many things. Of course, we need to change the way we look towards society, the way we address society. And when I talk about society, I talk, of course, about groups, families, organizations. But, well, one of the ways to create change is to create communities of practices. This is quite clear for me. But these communities of practices must be learning communities of practice. First of all, learning communities of practices. So communities of practices that address learning, that want to learn by themselves, right, in order to create new ways. And they need to be transformational communities of practices. So they need to be open to transformation, right? It's not, they must not be dogmatic at all. They must be open to new possibilities. Well, which is the approach? Which is the simple approach that I propose? When I say I propose, we wrote that in one. I will refer to you in the last slides. We wrote that, so it's not only a slideshow. It's written and it's published. But of course, it's a process. We are always building upon the things that we already wrote. So the idea is, what is exactly the development goals? What are the development goals? And there are two ways of looking toward the development goals. Even yesterday, I was in a formal meeting in a municipality, and there was two different ways of addressing development goals. One of the ways of addressing development goals is the following. They are quite easy because there are 17 development goals and 169 straight goals, right, within the 17 goals. So this is quite clear. So we only have to say which are the goals, and that's it. Well, this is completely wrong, right? Because this is not a transformational thinking at all, and we will not build futures and sustainable and livable futures with this kind of thinking. So also, this is correct. What I said, it is correct. Of course, there are 17 goals, and we have 169 straight, specific goals within this. But this is not a way to transform. This is a way to control. This is the maximalist agenda, and this is a way to control. And this kind of agenda is a more top-down agenda, all right? This is an agenda in which governments should be more involved, right? But what about the people? What about us? So how can we build communities of practices and transform the world from bottom up? How can we do it? And the way is to address, as I see it, the way is to address the 5 dimensions. So the 5 dimensions are quite clear, and they are also in the declaration of the SDGs. So the 5 dimensions are the people, the people, the planet, okay, prosperity, peace, and partnership. So this is what we need to know, as I see it. We need to know that we, the people, want a planet with prosperity, peace, and that we can build it together in a partnership. And in order to create partnerships, we should create communities of practices. It's as simple as that. So it's not very intellectual, this, right? So in order to build from bottom up with kids, because in order to have a big transformation, we have to have kids to think about this, right? Young people and kids. right? And so we need to create a lobby of people. A lobby of people is to spread transformational learning communities of practices. So young people, kids that can think, can address in an open way transformations. That's the drive of the SDGs, transforming our world. So we need to have a transformational thinking with young people and to create ways, open ways, in order to build possible futures. And if we spread these learning communities of practices, and if these learning communities of practice are in fact transformational communities of practices, we may survive the 21st century, right? So the idea is this. Of course, this is a programmatic ambivalence. I'm not saying, not at all, that government are not used anymore. No, not at all. I'm completely pro several processes of controlling, a polyarchy, right? Not an anarchy, not a bureaucracy, but a polyarchy, right? With several checks and balances from everywhere, but in which, of course, the lobby of people is very relevant. So the big picture is to achieve a transformational learning path, which should be a double or a triple or bound process. When I say a double, means top-down and bottom-up. But in the practice, this will be, in fact, triple or in more layers, right? We will have several layers. And the methodological itineraries. So what are the methodological itineraries? It's to try to answer the question, okay, I like the idea. How can I do it? So this is, how can I do it? And, well, we can do it. It's easy. So it's not complicated, right? We can do it as we try to do it with young people and kids, and as well with elders, right? So, and we just, one of the ways, we did it in several ways. So in streets, right? We just did it in streets, or we did it in schools. And one of the ideas is just, well, a good neighborhood to live, or a good city to live. Just think about, ideate a good city to live, a good house to live, right? And if we put people, young people, and in an intergenerational dialogue, to think about this, to address these transformational processes, in fact, we are creating transformational plans. These are transformational plans, right? Every time that we say, well, in which kind of city would you like to live? In which kind of house would you like to live? In which kind of organization would you like to live? In fact, we are creating transformational plans. So we are approaching a transformational thinking. We are spreading learning processes, transformational learning communities of practices. And then, of course, we have to check each other and we have to dialogue. We have to create, in fact, a polyalogue in which all these transformational plans are addressed and are discussed. Eventually, if we can bring people like the authorities from municipalities into this discussion, we are already transforming the neighborhoods, the houses, the organizations. This is the lobby of the people. So we should start in kindergartens, right? We should start in kindergartens. We should start in basic schools. Of course, universities are good places as well, right? But we should start as soon as possible in order to create this idea, people discussing how to design our future. And when we design, we are acting, we are activating our future. We are, in fact, doing the feed forwarding with these simple gestures, right? In this simple way. So I'm finishing because this is just to give an idea and to open up for discussion. Well, if you want to know something about things that I wrote about it, in which I addressed this, I wrote this, A Good City for Living, and this I wrote and I published in a journal of this university, from a journal of architecture and urbanism, and the idea that I brought here today, it's published in this Journal of Sustainable Development, Transformational Communities, a Programmatic Ambivalence as a Learning Pact for a Cognitive Planet. Of course, not everything that I told is there. I already had some more things, but this will be published elsewhere. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed.